Welcome to episode 4 of How to Train, tips and tricks for your workouts. 5 exercises that we're going to cover are Kettlebell Swing, Dumbbell Alternating Snatch, Stability Ball Hamstring Curls, Dumbbell Renegade Rows, and Wall Balls. I'm going to start this session by warming up with a stick and just going through a few different exercises to basically mobilize all my joints, get my muscles warm and get me super prepared for this session, which is going to be short but intense. So this is a nice quick warm up using a stick with the aim to mobilize joints, stretch out all the major muscles and prepare myself for the session ahead. The first few exercises are just light mobility movements and it builds up into bigger exercises such as deadlifts, lunge to overhead reach, and we then progress on to some activation drills for the glutes, the core, and an exercise to finish, which just gets the heart rate up and gets me moving a little bit quicker. So something we really want to try and avoid when we're doing the kettlebell swing is turning it into a squat and bending the knees too much. We want to keep it as much as we possibly can a hip hinging based movement, where we're really focused on the posterior chain muscles, the glutes, the hamstrings, the lower back, and we're moving from the hip and not from the knees. Think of it as a dynamic RDL. If you are squatting down, you're bending your knees too much, here's a little tip you could do to overcome that. Place a kettlebell in between your feet when you're starting up, and then it's there as a visualization so that when you're going through the kettlebell swing, you don't go down too low with the kettlebell. If you're going too low with the kettlebell, you're going to bend your knees. If we go a little bit higher with the kettlebell, the chances are our legs are going to be a little bit straighter and we're not going to bend the knees as much. I want us to go through the top half of our legs. So if we section the bottom half there, that's a square, we don't want to be going that square. And if we section the top half as a square, that's where we want the kettlebell to travel. Okay? So this is just there to let me know I'm not to go into that bottom half, and if I do, I'm going to hit the kettlebell. Second point I want to cover is I want you to have relaxed arms. I don't want there to be any tension through the shoulders or the forearms. Don't over grip it, and don't think about it as being a shoulder exercise where we're doing a front raise. I can't front raise 24 kilograms. Well, that's as best as I can do anyway. So that's just showing you that the movement isn't coming from here, it's coming from here. So relaxed arms, keep the kettlebell up nice and high, and really focus on thrusting the hips, driving the hips, keeping the grip nice and relaxed in the hand, not letting it come over your shoulders, and not getting into a position where it's getting pulled up with the arms, because what happens then is this becomes slow and tense and tight instead of being fast and loose and dynamic. Last thing I'm going to cover is timing. It's quite easy when we go through the kettlebell swing to get the timing wrong at the bottom. When the kettlebell's going through the legs, it's still traveling that way sometimes when we're starting to come forward. So the kettlebell's going that way while our hips are starting to go this way. We don't want that. We want the kettlebell to finish its journey through and come back at the same time as the hips. And this one is a little bit more difficult to get and to teach, and it just comes with repetition. So the more you do this exercise, the better your timing's going to get. But something to think about is, imagine you've got a big cymbal here and a big cymbal here. So like a cymbal as when we're playing the drums. You've got a big cymbal at the front, you've got a big cymbal at the back. I want you to hit both those cymbals, okay? Really focusing a lot on the cymbal behind me, okay? So that we're finishing the first part of the swing. We're not just sort of going to this position here, we're really pushing through and finishing it so it's got nowhere else to go. We've got a full stretch on the hamstrings, and then the kettlebell comes back through in time with the hips. So cymbal here, cymbal there. Dumbbell alternating snatches. Great exercise, is going to work your whole body, lower body all the way up into upper body, and we're working each side individually. What do we want to focus on with this exercise? Well, first of all, you want to be using your legs to generate the momentum and the power. So when I'm at the bottom position, down here, my thought process is jump as high as I can, okay? That's going to recruit all the big muscles in my legs, and it's going to create speed, and it's going to take a little bit of strain away from the wrist, the elbow, and the shoulder as I'm passing through overhead. The second thing is I want to keep it close to my body. If I don't keep it close to my body, it then becomes harder to lift because it's further away from me, it becomes heavier. So, little tip to think about when keeping it super close to the body is imagine you're zipping up your jacket like this. You would probably zip your jacket up like that, and your elbow would come above the wrist. That's what I want you to do when you're using the dumbbell in this exercise. Zip the jacket up and then punch it through at the top. If I put it all together, it's jump, zip the jacket, punch. Like that. And when I'm changing hands, I'm going all the way down to the floor, and I'm changing hands as I'm going down, just before I get to the floor, if I can get good at that. Or I'm going down and popping it on the floor and then picking it up again.
For stability ball hamstring curls, you really want to have a stable base and have balance throughout the movement. I'm achieving this by having my arms set nice and wide. To create as much tension as possible in the hamstrings, you really want to drive your heels into the ball. Think about piercing the ball with your heels. So that your feet don't slide off the ball when you drag it in, set your heels just a little bit further away than center. That's going to allow you to get full range of motion and keep your feet on the ball throughout the rep. Make sure to control the movement throughout and don't let your hips drop down onto the floor.
So with Renegade Rows, you want to have a nice stable base. You want to keep your hips completely still, or as still as you possibly can, and the same with your head. You don't want a lot of movement. You want to resist rotation as you're taking one dumbbell off the floor and placing it back down again. It's a really, really good core exercise. Have the dumbbells relatively close together. That's going to make it a little bit easier to do. And have your feet a little bit wider apart. If you want to make it harder, bring your feet closer together, put the dumbbells slightly further away. So a good tip to help keep it as stable as possible is when you're pulling one dumbbell up, I want you to think about pushing this dumbbell through the floor. That'll help you engage your core and keep your hips more stationary as you're doing the movement. So as you're pulling, you're also pushing with the opposite side. And the last thing to think about is as you're going through the row movement, I want you to row it to your hips. I want you to take it to your pockets and not sort of straight up like this, so that we avoid shrugging the shoulder and overworking our upper traps. Keep your elbows tucked in and down, neck nice and long, and pull it to your hips. Wall balls, full body exercise, utilizing your legs, your core, and your upper body and your shoulders. First tip is, how far do you stand away from the wall? Put your arms out straight, touch the wall with the fingertips, and that is a perfect distance for doing this exercise. Second thing to point out is the position of the elbow. We don't want our elbows to be by our side because the forearm is going to be pointing towards the wall. So it's more like a chest pass if our elbows are tucked in like this. We want to try and get our elbow up as high as we can. We need to think about taking it to about 45 to 90 degrees roughly. And just always try and have your forearm in a straight line with your elbow underneath your wrist so that we can press up and forward with the ball. So take those elbows up, make sure there's always a gap between your elbow and your side so that when you're holding the ball, you can press up the way and not forward. When you release the ball at the top, I want you to get your arms out completely straight. I don't want you to throw it with a bent elbow and catch it with a bent elbow. I want you to finish the movement, release the ball, and catch the ball at the top of the rep as you're coming down. When you catch the ball, you want to make sure that your hands are cupping the ball and underneath evenly on the same spot every time. You don't want to have your hands around the side of the ball, because then you're going to struggle to press upwards. So you need them on the angle of the ball at the bottom there, and there. It's the perfect position to then throw, release, and catch more efficiently. Another important thing to cover is the squat element. You want to make sure that your hips are breaking parallel. They're below the knees. So when the hamstrings and calves meet each other at the bottom, that is the bottom of your rep. Get really strict and consistent at hitting that position every single time. That's going to allow you to really use your legs to power up. A common fault that we sometimes see with wall balls is that going through the squat pattern, the feet roll in at the bottom of the movement, at the bottom of the squat. There is an inward movement of the foot, which in turn creates an inward movement of the knee. We want to really focus on keeping our feet flat on the floor and avoiding that movement so that our knees stay out and track our toes. So if our toes are, say, 5 to 1 on the clock face, then our knees should be 5 to 1 on the clock face. Little thing to think about so that we avoid falling in on the arches is, imagine there is a tomato underneath the arch of your foot, and you don't want to squash that tomato. You want to keep that tomato perfect, sitting there under the arch of your foot. Or maybe that's slightly too big. Let's think of a blueberry. Keep a blueberry underneath the arch of your foot. Don't squash the blueberry, and just make sure that you are maintaining a good position with your feet.
Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. If you like this content, please let me know. Comment below so I can continue to make more videos and help more people. Until next time, keep pushing, keep grinding, and remember, the only bad workout is the one you didn't do. If you have any exercises you want me to cover or training methods you want more information on, just let me know.